Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Gerardo Poli.
And this, sorry. Okay.
I'm Gerardo Poli.
I'm Hubert Hemstra, and this is the Vet Vault. Hello, Vet Vaulters, and welcome back. We've been saving today's guest for a special occasion, like a nice bottle of champagne. And my friends, it's time to pop the cork, because if this time in our lives isn't a special occasion, then what the hell will be? Dr. Alex Hynes is a force of nature. Whether she's on the floor in the emergency hospital, leading their team as a director of the group of clinics, showcasing our profession to the world on the Bondi Vet television show, mentoring the thousands of young vets who look up to her, or taking care of her daughter, you can't help but be inspired by her passion and energy whenever she crosses your path.
And as Alex's partner and partner in crimes, I could say that she has a mean left hook, an amazing switch kick, and just has this ability to keep on doing jumping lunges that makes me want to cry. She is my go-to person for advice and my mentor in many areas of my professional career. In our long-awaited episode with Alex, we talked to her about where she finds her motivation. Hubert asks her if she ever has bad days. And Alex gives us a masterclass on connecting with our clients, what they need from us, how to effectively give them what they need, and how to demonstrate value in what you do, and how things are different during the time of COVID-19, and how you and your business can stand out as a shining light in these potentially dark times. I know you'll enjoy this Vet Vault podcast with Dr. Alex Hynes.
Dr. Alex Hynes, finally, we have you on the podcast.
It's taken a while to get
and
here.
It's not from without me nagging her, but it took you to nag her, Hubert. They got her on the podcast.
Yeah, no, I really did appreciate the invite. I love listening to you guys. And so I actually feel very honored to be here today.
Just for our listeners, when I started planning when I heard that you're coming on and I started planning, I remembered that you and Gerardo were actually my very, very first interview. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, before the podcast was actually a thing, I was doing interviews just to do the book idea, and Gerardo and Alex kindly, very nicely submitted themselves to about an hour and a half or up to 2 hours of cross-examination at my dinner table until almost midnight.
And it was lots of fun.
I recorded that conversation so that I could transcribe it, and there's actually some genuinely good content on there. One day I'll release it if the listeners can put up with really shoddy sound, because I recorded it on a tiny little microphone, but you can hear what he's saying, and it's actually a really good conversation.
But we finally got Alex on the podcast, and Hubert has been saying, how about we get your better half on the podcast? And I'm like, dude, I thought we were bros, but obviously we are not. The whole process here is just to get Alex on the podcast, because she's a gun at so many things that I wish I was a gun at. So
I think the entire podcast is just a ruse to suck you in so that I can have access to Alex image.
And it's only taken how long? Finally,
2 years or something. How long?
It's called the long game.
Yeah, that's right.
That's
for
right.
a reason.
That's right.
For a reason.
How are you guys doing over in Brisbane in the whole COVID-19 quarantine situation?
Yeah, look, I actually feel very fortunate and very grateful that we really can, that we can even go out and exercise, in a lot of countries around the world, that people are so limited to what they can do. I was talking to a friend in Philippines yesterday, and only the person in the household with the quarantine pass can go out every 3 days. And when I consider that, Gerardo and I can go walking down to the beach every morning, go to the shops and get what we need, it's, I think we're very lucky. And I heard today that it's the second day in a row that Queensland has recorded 0 new cases. So in terms of, I don't think we can ever get too complacent, but in terms of feeling like we live in the lucky country at the moment, I really do. So
100%. In South Africa, they are complete lockdown as well. So very similar. Yeah. You're not actually supposed to leave your house. You can go to the shop one person going to go to the shops once a day, and that is it. No walks, no walks down to the beach or anything. It's you're stuck at home. So no, we are very fortunate.
But how we're going in Brisbane with with the COVID. You know what? Actually, Alex has a pretty cool perspective that I don't have. I've shared numerous times about the changes that we made in the team, and the changes that we made, like with siloing and team rosters and things like that. And she's come from a totally different perspective, one that I don't think that I could add value as much as value that she could add. But that's around like client, like connection and client experience, which is her like little baby.
The superpower.
Yeah,
the superpower. Insight there is incredible.
Now, before we get there, because I definitely want to drill down on that, but I want to ask, Alex, when I look at your social media and every time I've met you as well, you just look so positive and happy and driven, and I often wonder, does she ever have a bad day? Does Alex does she have a bad day, or if it's not a bad day, down moments? Do you have those, and what do they look like? What does a bad hour or two look like for Dr. Alex Hynes?
Yeah. So, yeah, look, I think for me, most of my days, as I said, even just before that now, I live an incredibly blessed life. I get to do the work that I love to do, and I get to share it with the world through social media and through Bondi Vet, and that's something I've always wanted to do. I've got this guy here, my beautiful daughter. So much, I guess I really do start the day with a lot of gratitude. If I have a bad day, there's certain things that I really need in my day to make my day go well. And if you follow me, you know that exercise is a big thing for me. If I can't do some exercise in a day, I'm not a very nice person to be around. So I need that sort of, that I really find it brings a balance to my state of mind, not only physically, but in how I sort of cope with the day and how I view things and that sort of thing. So a bad day for me would be a day when I couldn't either go out for a run or do some boxing or something like that. So, but most days are pretty good. So
I'm going to pipe in. Totally downplayed the journey, right? The journey, so she's blessed to be able to share her journey, like her day to day, what she does and the patient stories and things. But that was 4-5 years of hard work and just incredible work ethic there, that she had a vision in mind, right? And just took action and inspired me to do the stuff that I do as well. And I'm not going to let you get away with just going I'm incredibly blessed. All of a sudden this wand came out of the sky and whoosh, all of a sudden you get the opportunity to share this stuff. It's that was hard-earned work.
So this gets me closer to the point. So let's rewind 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
During this journey, when you've got your head down, you have a vision, you're working towards something, but it hasn't happened yet. Then you get bad days, surely. So how do you because some days you wake up and you go, I just can't be. Do you get that ever? Do you feel that? Or did you?
I'm really not that kind of person. That isn't the battle that I deal with so much. I definitely have in the past. I've always had a lot of energy, and I don't think I ever have days when I think I just can't be bothered.
She gets up. No matter what time she goes to bed, she gets up at 5 a.m. every morning, and it hurts my soul. I don't know how she does it. It's this incredible feat of just determination, and I'm I'll be awake at 8 o'clock.
I think for me it's all, and this was a journey over the last 5 years. It is all about a belief system. I did lack confidence. I was very, very shy growing up, and people often ask me, what changed, and I had a very compelling reason to change. I wanted to be able to share my vision, which was to really bring people behind the doors of vet hospitals. I was really conscious that people don't see what goes on. And there's quite often this idea of I drop my pet at the front door and then I just get them returned to me this huge bill, and what the hell happened, and what, why did it cost so much? And so what I wanted to be able to do was take people on a journey inside a veterinary clinic so they could really see the people that it takes to do this kind of work, the dedication, I guess the equipment, the care. We all know as veterinary professionals how much goes in to running a veterinary hospital, and that's something that pet owners just don't get a chance to see. So that was my vision. That was my compelling kind of mission, if you like. But I knew that there was things that I really needed to overcome along the way to make that happen, because I was very shy. And really, if you want to do that, if you want to bring people behind the doors of a hospital, you kind of got to get out there in front of the camera or in front of people and actually share that story. And so I just, over a period of time, really kind of changed my belief system about who I was. And I started to, I wanted to be the kind of person that got up at 5 a.m. every morning. I wanted to be the kind of person that really made a difference for others and could really share this in front of the camera. And so I believed that I was someone who could get in front of the camera and tell a story, even though, my voice was shaking and I wasn't confident. And the really interesting thing in that whole confidence loop is the more that you do it, the more that your confidence grows. So the first times that I was doing it, it was awkward and it was messy, and I was, I remember my face used to just go bright red. But then you do it and you think, oh, I've done that. And, what could I do next? And so I think you get that momentum to really start to achieve more and more. And what's the next big thing that I could achieve? So that was kind of really where it started. And when you talk about, do I have a bad day? I think I'm a person, I definitely do get to the end of some days and think that wasn't a great day, but I'm one of those people who, we have a unique opportunity every single day to start again. So I go to bed and I get up again in the morning at 5 a.m. and I think, wow, this is a new day. And the things that happened yesterday that didn't go so well, because I journal every morning, and I think about what is it that I can do better today? What is it that I've learned from yesterday? So that's how I choose to live my life. So, yeah.
So it starts with the decision. Because it's incredible. You do it really well because you can know all these things. But actually applying it.
I don't know if it's a decision, right? It's people decide. People do New Year's resolutions every New Year's, right? Right? They potentially just don't take action, right?
Yeah, so this is what I'm trying to get at, because then you can have these things that you want to do, but it's hard sometimes. Not sometimes. Stuff is hard. And then to have that persistence to say, no, I am driven to do this, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to keep doing it and keep my head up. I don't know, is it a talent? Is it something you're born with, or is it just you work at it?
Yeah, look, I think one of the biggest things to get over is that fear of failure. You know what I mean? When you go to look at what needs to be done, and we all as humans start to hesitate, like, well, what if I do this? What if it's the wrong decision? What if it's the wrong decision? What if people laugh at me? A lot of us have that real fear of what will other people think of us, and how will people judge us? And if you can let go of that, if you can let go of the fact that if you do this and it doesn't work and it fails, doesn't matter, it doesn't mean anything. And if you can detach that meaning, or that particularly that meaning about yourself from failure, then all of a sudden there's this incredible freedom that comes with being able to do that. One of the biggest failures for me, and I share this a lot when I'm talking to vet students and recent graduates, is that I was in the role of veterinary manager at Animal Emergency Service. I had recently very suddenly dropped into this role because the manager at that time, my very good friend Caitlin Logan, had taken her life. So it was a very traumatic time for all of us, really. And I suddenly found myself in a job that I never to be expected to be in, that I really didn't have a lot of idea of what I was doing. Then that year, the following year, I sat my emergency and critical care membership. And there was a just a big expectation. You know, I was managing the hospital. A lot of the other veterinary teams there had their membership, and it was sort of like this natural course of action that I would sit my membership, and I failed. I failed it, and I'd really, you know, we're such high achievers as veterinarians. I'd never failed anything like that in my life before. And I remember having a call from my business partner, Rob Webster, and him saying to me, "Gosh, Alex, you know, would you consider sitting it again next year?" And I said to him, "Rob, I wouldn't not consider it sitting it again next year. You know, I couldn't imagine not getting back up and wanting to do that again." And so I did, and I sat it the next year and I passed it. But that failure that I had that year was such a great, you know, I call it one of the greatest victories that I've ever had in my life, because it really made me not afraid to fail. And I've failed many times since then in various things that I've done. But there's always that, you know what, that's just a blip on the radar. That won't mean anything. You know, what we've got to do is just keep moving forward. So I often attribute my ability to take action and make decisions, whether that's in my life personally, whether that's me as an emergency vet making decisions, quick decisions with incomplete information on the floor as a clinician. It is just that I have to make a decision now, so let's make a decision and deal with it if it's the wrong decision, as opposed to inaction and not making a decision, you know, is the worst thing you can do. So
my thoughts there were, like, when she was talking about, is that she has, and this is clear, and she's as much as my mentor as my partner, is that she has a vision for herself in her life. Like, share what goes on behind the doors behind a vet clinic, right? And but it's like, oh, I could do that on an Instagram post. But it's like, how could I make that bigger? How could I have a bigger impact? But it's this thing which I think which slows people down, which is the whole SMART goal thing. So SMART, so specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and timely. Look, I have nothing against SMART goals, but what I believe is, and what Alex just said there, which actually just kind of just ticked off in my head, was that actually she had like a massive goal, or like almost too big to comprehend on how big to get there. But she started with a massive goal, which was like M, massive, just huge beyond belief, and A was like aspiring. It's kind of lifted her up. And S, it was system based. She was able to break it down and develop a system. How could I share a message? I'm going to be better on camera. I'm going to be better at communicating. So the system was just improving those particular areas, and it was structured. She was able to break down that goal into SMART goals. And I think that's what people need to do. Start with a goal which is so freaking big that it scares the shit out of you, and then break it down into SMART goals. And like, Alex takes me along for the ride. I tell you what, if I'm on a TV show, it's because Alex has influenced me to be there, and I'm just the sidekick. And I don't mind being Robin. I don't mind being Robin in this relationship.
No, not at all. It is actually great. I'm quite a serious person, Hubert. You may or may not realize that, but I am you know, at heart, really quite a serious person. And the great thing about having Dorado is that he kind of like lightens the mood a little bit when I get too serious and too ingrained in something, because I'm just a very intense person, I think, in a good way, I hope. But yeah.
That fear of failure thing always fascinates me. Why are we so scared of failing? As you say, you're not going to die. And even though I know this, that you still limit yourself.
That's one of my favorite sayings, Hubert. But did you die?
Yeah.
And the people out there are like, yeah, but my patient died. But like, to be honest,
that's not good. But
that's like one of my mentors said to me, and maybe this might shock people, but if some of your patients don't die, you're not trying.
Yeah.
But also, when people say that to me, yeah, but my patient died, the patient most likely died because it was sick, or it had extensive trauma, not because you were its veterinarian.
Yeah.
And I think that's where people need to separate who they are as professionals there to help, as opposed to the disease itself, whether that be, because I hear it a lot in things like tick paralysis, for example. He aspirated, and while I was trying to take x-rays, no, he aspirated because he had tick paralysis. And aspiration is a complication of tick paralysis, not because you were doing this, or so I think that's where it's important. People want to take on the responsibility personally, and that's not our role.
I'm not downplaying learning from mistakes, but also like people catastrophize about the influence that they've had on a particular scenario.
And outside of the clinical scenario, I mean, so the fear of failure of you saying, okay, I'm going to start doing YouTube videos. It's petrifying. But why is it so petrifying to do that? If you think back to our roots as early Homo sapiens, or even before that, when we were still monkeys, you lived in that tribe and you survived in that tribe, and your survival depended on being accepted in your little group. If you're kicked out of the tribe, you're dead. Something's going to eat you. You're going to starve to death. So social embarrassment, failing, looking like an idiot, was deadly when we were still developing as a species. Now that's not the case. Now we way beyond that. But your monkey mind, that old brain of yours, that evolutionary mind, is still scared of that. Still goes, well, if I'm alienated from the group, if people think I'm an idiot, I'm going to die.
Because it was life and death back then.
It was life and death.
But it's not anymore.
And I find that helps me to think of that. To go, listen, this fear that you're having is irrational. It's your monkey mind. Now use your modern mind and tell it to just, thank you, but I'm not going to die. Just shut up. And
No, I love that, Hubert. And that is exactly right. We have to recognize what is our primeval brain that wants to take over, and instead recognize it, acknowledge it, but then use the logical, as you said, the modern part of our brain to make decisions, and that's how achievement's going to happen, is by pushing through that.
But let me add one level there: monkey brain, modern brain, high performer brain, which is where they coach themselves out of that situation. Ask the questions, as you just said: am I going to die from the situation? Yeah. Did this one negative feedback does it actually mean that I'm a terrible vet? Really kind of like ask yourself, like if you were providing advice to someone else in your head, let's say that you're going to take, like one of the easiest things to do is take yourself out of the situation and then ask yourself questions from like, what would you ask your friend who was down in the dumps? Then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I actually, no, I think that was a reasonable, course of action. I think that actually that was it's very unlikely. And you know what? It's 1 out of 300 cases you've seen that gave you negative complaint. You're not a shit vet. Like, don't catastrophize.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're complicated little monkeys, aren't we?
Yeah.
Yes.
And at the moment, it's interesting with coronavirus. At the moment, you see human behavior become even more kind of when we think about the toilet paper incident, I think that's really interesting in the way that people react. I mean, there's some really basic psychological needs there. People need to feel secure. They need to, they go and buy all this toilet paper and they feel like that's going to give them some sort of security or certainty. And then they look around, what's everyone else doing? And if you're in the jungle and someone jumps right because there's a snake there, you jump right as well, right? Because that's what we do. We look around at what everyone else is doing. And we're also looking for, and I see the same behavior with clients as well. We think about our clients are coming through, they're feeling very stressed. They're looking for that kind of that certain, that security. They're looking for that, they want to be able to relate to us. And also they're looking particularly for that we are competent, that we can do the job. And those kind of emotions are more heightened than ever in them at the moment. And it's challenging. It's challenging because we're doing a lot of consultations over the phone at the moment. And so those normal ways where we would really start to develop those relationships and develop trust, they just don't exist at the moment because we don't have that physical contact with owners. So we've got to kind of balance that really between how people are behaving and, what their needs are.
Yeah. So backtrack there. I think you said very, very important stuff there, but I want to highlight it. So tell us again so take COVID out of this. What do our clients want from us when they come to the vets?
So I think if we go back to basics, more than anything, people want connection. They want to know that they can trust you. And really that develops through human connection. 50 to 80% of their decisions are made on human connection. Not, so before we talk about price, before we talk about gold standard or anything like that, we have to connect with people so that they will develop that trust, and they will put the trust of one of their most precious things in the world, which is their pet, in our hands, and believe in the value of what we're doing, and believe, importantly, that they're part of that conversation about what the treatment is going to be or what the treatment plan is. And they need to feel that control. And it's very easy, particularly for veterinarians, to feel like we need to be in control. We need to tell them what to do. And I really believe the approach is there's three people in this relationship. There's the owner, there's the veterinarian, and there's the pet. So it's quite unique. It's different from a human patient relationship. Yeah. And so we have to form a partnership with this client to make the best decision for their pet. And, part of that is identifying what's their biggest fears. And really the way we do that is to listen to them, is to listen to what are their concerns. Because so often we assume that their big concern is money. What's it going to cost?
Yeah, totally.
But for some people, it's not about that. It's like they're going to be separated from their pet. That you're going to say that Fluffy needs to come into hospital for the night. And for some people, that's a really frightening thought. They've not been away from their dog. And so if you can identify that early in the conversation and address that fear, either by saying, look, if we can have her here for the next couple of hours, figure out what's wrong, we'll try and get her home to you tonight. But that's a decision that we'll make together once we find out what's going on.
It's almost like a question like, what is your biggest concern with her staying the night? And it's like, Fluffy's never been outside the house in 16 years. Like my husband has like a mental disorder or something and really needs my son or child. I've had those conversations before, but having them feel like as if they've been listened to is like incredible. Like ask question, open-ended question, find out what their thoughts were, what their concerns were, get them to feel like as if they've been heard is one of the key things, I think.
Yeah, in the last couple of years, there's something I started doing that I find works really well. Because sometimes you sense that something's off. You're in a consult and
you're trying to work it out.
It's not gelling, and I'm like, wow, this guy's an idiot. And I've just started asking. I'll stop the conversation and say, you seem unhappy about something.
Yes.
What's bothering you?
Yeah.
And then boom, and then they come in. That's gold. And then they get it off their shoulders. They go, I feel like you're bullshitting me. Fine, then let's talk about that. But at least just get it off your chest, because otherwise they don't say it, and then that's the recipe for disaster. Yeah. Have you got any other tips or things you say or that you do, Alex, to help you form that connection and trust? Or Gerardo?
I got one. Okay, just going to pop this in there. For everyone who is out there like, oh, that's common news and that's common knowledge, and I do that shit all the time. Just wait. How about you put a phone in the corner of the consult room and record yourself in the consult? Yeah. That's my challenge to you. Okay, if you're listening to this now and you think you got this stuff all sorted, record your consultations and then time how long it takes for you to cut the owner off. Time how long it takes for you to go from open-ended question to closed-ended questions, where closed-ended questions is about you controlling the conversation and trying to diagnose stuff before you've even done any diagnostic tests.
The other thing about closed-ended questions is if you start your consultation with questions like, is he vomiting, or did he eat dinner last night, you're asking for a yes/no answer. And so the client will assume that you're looking for those short answers. And if you want to know something, then you'll ask for it. And so instead of, starting with those open-ended questions like, tell me a little bit about why you're here with Fluffy today, or those things that just allow them to talk, and do allow them to talk. I think sometimes we have a fear, oh my God, we're going to be stuck in here for half an hour listening to about Fluffy's morning habits, and researchers show that really it doesn't take very much longer for the client to give you this information. And if they start talking about diet or something like that, and you think, oh, I want to ask questions about diet, just zip it, just hold it, write it down. And then what you then want to do is, once they've finished their spiel, then you want to go back and say, look, a little bit earlier you talked about his diet. I just want to go back to that, because you said that you give him chicken and rice every Tuesday. And that serves two purposes. Number one, it helps you to drill down into the information that you're looking for, which is really important. But the second thing, it really shows that client that you were listening. You were listening when she gave you the rundown on what the weekly diet is. And so those kind of things to do are really, really valuable. But there's one thing that I think is really important, and it's maybe not so relevant at the moment because clients are outside the hospital, but I really think there's a physical element in the consultation room that makes a huge difference in how you connect. There's a real temptation, and Hubert, I can talk about this for hours because this is so much my passion, but this will be my last tip for now anyway.
No, we've got hours. Go for it.
Is that as vets, we want to get stuck into the physical. We think, oh, I can multitask. I can take a history and do a physical exam, and and it's all over and done with in 5 minutes. But what you don't realize is that clients really need to see the value in what you're doing, and there's value in you sitting down and listening to them. And I never use a computer because I think there's this kind of, I don't exactly know what it is, but it's a human thing where if you're typing on a phone or you're typing on a computer, it says to people you're not listening. Yeah. You're not paying attention, you're distracted. Whether or not you're writing notes, most of the time your back's turned and there's something about devices that says you're not important and I'm not listening. Whereas if you have a clipboard and a piece of paper and a pen, which I will always have, and I'm always sitting down, never ever standing, always sitting down on their level, because it shows I've got time. We've got all the time in the world here for you to tell me about what's happening. You're on an eye level, but I'll write things down as they're talking because it makes them feel like, oh, this is important what I'm sharing here. She wants to listen, and so I'll write those things down. So I think that physicality and just spending that time taking a history. Don't be looking. You can still do your distant exam, absolutely, of the pet, but don't be writing and examining and taking history, because then when it comes to the physical exam, you want to put 100% into your physical exam, and you want to show the client exactly what you're doing and talk to them about what you're doing. First of all, I'm going to get some vital signs. I know Fluffy's here for his sore leg, but I really want to see that he's not running a fever. I want to have a listen to his heart. And then I'm listening to his heart, I'm listening, and you talk through all of that. Everything that you're doing, that's where you demonstrate value to that client. And I'm just checking his other leg now to see if he's got any pain in the other leg. Then I'm coming back to that. So that whole physical exam, there's a whole process you can go through with that in order to really make them feel like they've got the value out of the history taking, out of the physical exam, and that you are listening to them. So those are some of the things that I find very, very valuable. And particularly, I'm an emergency vet. 90% of the clients that I see have never, ever come into our hospital before. There's no trust. There's no long-standing relationship. We usually ask them to spend a lot of money in a very short amount of time because every patient is sick, sometimes very sick, critical. Yeah. And so those sort of things is what I've learned over the last 21 years of being a vet, are some of the, the most valuable tools I have, aside from my surgical skills, aside from my diagnostic skills. My skills in the consult room I consider to be the most valuable ones that I have.
Oh my God, the most valuable ones in the whole of animal emergency service. And how many vets we have? 70 vets. So yeah, I wish I was as good as her. Yeah. when I went before, when we paused, and I went like this. Yeah. That's one of my secrets. Like it's touch, touch, an appropriate touch. And I'm the king of appropriate touch. That sounds terrible. Okay. But I'd like
it's better than being the king of inappropriate touch.
Inappropriate touch. Okay. I don't condone any of that stuff, but like it's listening, connecting, and like a 1 second hand on the shoulder is just something that adds incredible value. But now, because we are doing phone consults, We have to amplify our phone consultation skills to the next level. Like it is so valuable and so important. We can't just sit there going, yep.
So with the current situation, has the requirements that the clients want from us changed at all? Are there extra things you have to keep in mind, do you think?
Yeah, I do. I think it's interesting because if you speak to a lot of veterinarians and who are working in surgeries where clients are not in the building, which is, I believe, it's the majority of us, they'll say to you that clients are very understanding of the situation. And I think there's two aspects to that. Number one, yes, they are understanding. But the first thing is that may not last forever. That we're seeing that in the United States now, where people are just saying, hey, you know what, I'm not actually going to put up with this. I want to be with my dog while you do this examination. So as people move through this crisis, like with any kind of traumatic incident, people can very much change in their emotions and how understanding they are and what they believe is the right thing to do. The second part to that is that, people's needs, emotional stresses are much higher. People are going to remember this time in history forever. And if you have if they have a really terrible experience with you at your vet clinic, they will remember that forever. And you really want to be the clinic that they say, hey, Jerry, I remember when I had to take my cat to an emergency hospital, to any vet hospital during coronavirus, and wow, they were just incredible. I felt so supported and so cared for, and they looked after Fluffy so well that that they want to go and tell 20 of their friends what an amazing experience it was. And I've said that too, because obviously there is some degree of apprehension amongst the team. Well, what if we have a pet from a corona positive household? What do we do then? And there's this kind of like fear of like, oh, wow, what if it could transmit? We could get fomite transmission. What do we tell the owner? Stay in your car, don't come down, get someone else. And the challenge that I've really put to the team is, what if those clients from corona positive households could feel more supported and more cared for than any other client that came through the door that day? That's the challenge we have. How do we make sure that we look after everybody? Because holy hell, they must be so stressed about their health, stressed about passing the disease onto their family, stressed about not working. There would be so much stress, and how can we be the who they need in their time of need? That's the challenge. And that will look different for different people, but if we keep that in the forefront of our minds, then I don't think we can go wrong.
I was going to ask, how do you achieve that, being that clinic that is going to be remembered as the fantastic clinic? But so what you're saying there is there's no recipe for it. Like there's no set plan. Is it take every situation as it comes, or do you have a strategy that you're applying at your business to be that memorable clinic who, despite the limitations, are still delivering that exceptional service?
Yeah, I think what we got to do is put aside the protocols are very important, and we want to have them down packed so that if something happens, everybody in the building knows what to do, whether that's the PPE gear or how we decontaminate the pet or whatever that is. That stuff should just be happening in the background. From a client's perspective, they should just know very clearly what they need to do and what they shouldn't do. But more importantly than anything, they should feel like we really care, like there's that we will always see their pet, that they are very much important to us. And I think we do a lot of that through the language that we use. If we're talking to someone, just saying to them things like the fact that we are all in this together. This disease doesn't we don't get to choose who becomes infected with it. And so this is a humanitarian crisis that we're all going through together. And so really having that sense of community, we're all in this together, but also just explaining things to them and making, because what happens when we get stressed, there's a tendency that we want to talk, right? We want to take control of the situation. And we want to say, you need to come down and you need to do this and stay in your car and call me. And whereas really what we need to do is to ask them how they are. How are you going? How can I help you? I'm going to say some things while I go through what's happening with your cat. And if there's anything that you don't understand, I want you to stop me and feel that you can stop me in the conversation and I'll explain it. Those sort of things are really important. So I think there's a lot in language that we can use, a lot in our tone, a lot in the reassurance, and a lot in including them in the conversation and the plan about how we're going to manage this. The other thing I think, Hubert, is that I always think about how could we go above and beyond in this situation, in this extraordinary situation. And I see companies around the world doing it. Doing things that they've never offered before because they recognize an opportunity for contribution to a bigger cause, particularly. And so whether that's for some clinics being more flexible on your payment strategies, looking at other options for payment for people, because sure, we say, we these are the finance options and this, we don't go outside of these lines and things like that. But could we for this particular time in history? I mean, veterinarians, we're very fortunate that we are essential services. We get to keep operating. Is there some degree of structure that we could set up, or is there some free service we could offer them? Could we do teletriage or something like that, where we have an opportunity to help them, so they can decide whether or not they do need to come down for a consultation. Those are, I guess, the sort of thing. And when I say teletriage, I'm talking about talking to a veterinarian or something like that. So I think there's so much opportunity there. And what I would hate to do would be to get to the end of this pandemic and look back and think, gosh, there were things there that we could have done to help people with pets out there, and we didn't take that opportunity because we were scared or we were worried about, obviously we need to look after our businesses because we employ a lot of people, and our employees absolutely need to come first. If we look after our employees, they will look after the clients. But, don't be scared to think about things that you've never done before that you could do now. So
I love chatting to you. I think that's super, super valuable. I can't believe we haven't had you on yet. You guys think that it's common knowledge. And I think because you come from a practice where it is talked about and implemented, you presume that this stuff is common. It's not really. In real life, some people know it and some people learn it, but we don't talk about it and we don't share it as much as it should be shared.
It's put into practice. It's like taking
action.
Into
practice, exactly.
Common knowledge is not necessarily common practice. How many, common knowledge that eating junk food makes you fat? But then how many of us avoid junk food? Not very many of us, right? So, common knowledge is that you exercise more and eat less junk food and it makes you healthier. How many of us are don't take action and implement common knowledge? Yeah. So, there's common knowledge everywhere, but until someone actually does it, that action, Hubert, is what makes it big.
It's the key, man. All right. So building relationships and caring. It reminds me, I read a quote, apparently it's from a very famous human medicine lecturer. I want to mangle the quote, but it comes down to something about the best way to care for your patients is to care about your patients. It is just all the stuff you say.
Oh, I love it.
It's something like that. I think I've messed it up, but it's what it comes down to.
It makes perfect sense. It's awesome. I love it.
It is just because all the stuff you're talking about, it starts in your attitude. It starts in an empathetic attitude to instead of going, well, there's this crisis and it's COVID and the cat's sick. That's exactly what you're saying. But you just need to decide, hey, listen, I am here to care.
Yeah.
So let me care. And if you care, then it's going to look like you care. Guess what? And you're going to give a connection with the client because they're going to recognize that you care.
Yeah, absolutely. I think empathy is one of those things where we hear it all the time. We need to be empathetic, but really we need to, on the daily, be reflecting, you know, am I really being empathetic when I go back out the back of the vet surgery and start swearing about this client who just refused this treatment for this dog? Are we really trying to understand what might be going on below the surface about why they may not have been able to choose that option? Was it a lack of trust? Was it a lack of, you know, we don't know what's going on in the background. Maybe they don't have the finances, or maybe, you know, they have other family needs that they're going through. And there's so much that we don't know about what's going on with people. And I think empathy is, if you really can live empathy, and at the moment, it, you know, even goes beyond empathy. I think at the moment for a lot of people who are in really severe financial straits, loss of jobs, you know, they're really in a bad way. And I really think compassion is what we need to be really trying to show to a lot of people out there who are really, really struggling, because we think we understand what it feels like to be in this position, but if you're a veterinarian and you have a job, then you're ahead of a lot of people in life. So
10% of Australians or something like that, right?
Yeah. Jeez. So can we talk about phones and Zoom and connecting to people over the phones? You mentioned it earlier, Gerardo. I'm a big fan of face-to-face. I'm not a big fan of phone calls. Ever since I can remember, I don't know why. I've got to think about phone calls. I struggle to connect. So how can I do it better?
Alex and I have had this discussion because we feed off each other in terms of our, you know, what works, what doesn't work in the consult room, and how can we connect better. And we both talk about consultation skills and consultation styles and things like that. And we have different styles, and kind of we learn off each other. And my feeling is that there is no difference. Like, because we were going to go down the whole pathway of having video consultations, right? But then for both of us, we feel like as if we can still connect with clients over the phone, provided that we are engaged, we listen, we are present, and we are like, there's energy and there's certainty in our voice. Like, you can be completely uncertain about what's going on with your pet, but I am completely certain we need to do something about it. You know, your pet is sick and I don't know what's causing it, but the first step is a blood test. Sometimes it's like, I don't even know what the first step is. You know, what would be the age, clinical symptom, you know, it's an x-ray, ultrasound, blood test, whatever it may be, blood test. Respiratory disease, x-ray. Abdominal pain, old dog, ultrasound. You know, like I just keep the decision-making process simple, but I'm certain that we need to do something. And they need to hear that on the phone.
Yeah, the relief that they hear when you demonstrate that certainty, absolutely. Going back to your question there about phone calls versus face-to-face, we, at the start, as Gerardo said, our plan was to do video calls, like either a Zoom call or a Skype call or WhatsApp. What we found was that in people in an emergency situation, they don't want to download an app on their phone. They're just like, get someone on the phone and talk to me about what's happening. That's the most familiar kind of medium that they know to talk to someone. So we quickly, like literally within a day, we were like, okay, that's not going to work. Once patients were in hospital, absolutely, we could set up a video call for them to have a virtual visit with their pet. That was fine. But in that initial consultation where they've brought their pet to the front door, it's been taken and triaged and they're waiting out in the car park, they just want someone on the phone to talk to them. And being able to, you know, I'm really a believer in making sure that when you get on that phone, you know exactly who you're going to be talking to. Is it Luke or is it Sharon or is it Lisa? What's the name of their dog? Is it male or female? Having those details like just down packed. Don't get on that phone until you know how old the dog is, what the dog's name is, whether it's male or female, because you have these minute opportunities to build that trust on that phone call. And if you get the sex of the dog wrong, if you get the owner's name wrong, you erode that trust like that, and you can't afford to do that on the phone.
You almost have to like bring your A game to A+ game, right? We talked about it before. When you go into a consult, you prep, you have all the stuff you need. You need pen, name badge, stethoscope, you know, client's name, pet's name, sex, and so forth, and a little bit of the history and so forth. And then you breathe and you go into the door and you're like, my name's Gerard, whatever it may be. You have your ritual. It's like you got to bring that ritual to the phone call, and you got to bring that. You got to think of everything else. What can they hear in the background? Is there a barking dog in the background? I need to go to a different room.
Don't be distracted. We often on phone calls and we're trying to multitask and do other things. Just because you're on a phone call, don't think you can do that. They'll hear that. They'll hear that.
You're right. Because it's tempting because they can't see you. You think, I could sit and type some notes on the side, but you're right.
Don't do that.
But even if you say type your notes, right? Okay, I say, look, I'm just going to type some notes as you're talking. So if you hear any pauses, it's because I'm typing notes because I want to make sure that I capture everything you say.
Great
give
advice.
yourself permission, but highlight them. And it's like, okay, so if it's silence, the veterinarian is typing down my notes because what I said was important.
That's great advice. Yeah, excellent.
And then recap. Okay, so what you said was this. Replay it. They now know that what you typed down was actually what they were talking about. They were listened. They then have the opportunity to go, actually, you know what? I forgot I fed him bones yesterday.
Great.
Replay it to them and give them the opportunity. Did I miss something out there? Was there anything else you wanted to add?
Yeah.
Have
you got a phone voice? Have you either of you got a phone voice? Do me your phone voice, Gerard.
My phone voice. Okay, so I was trained by the great Anthony Lay, right? And my phone voice is varied. I talk with different tones and it's melodic, and I talk at different paces because what happens is when people hear me on the phone, then it's interesting. And I use signposting. Okay, this is really important. And if you don't understand this, let me know because I want to make sure that we're on the same page here. And I'll talk slow, you make your voice interesting.
Yeah.
So that's what I believe.
What about you, Alex?
I'm going to give you a different sort of tip here, which is when you go to ask something Gerardo said, have you got any other questions? There's a very interesting study that's been done on the way that on language. I'm quite fascinated by behavioral science and language and linguistics. But if you phrase that last question when you're trying to get those last bits of information out, and you say, instead of saying, is there anything else you want to ask me? If you say, is there something else? The difference between some and any is huge. If you say, is there something else? Quite often they'll think, oh, there is something else, and you'll get something else. If you say, is there anything else? People are quite often like, oh, there's nothing really anything else.
The guru of play right here.
That's fascinating. I'm trying to think, because you're right. There's almost there's almost the default answer. Anything. The word is anything wrong? Do you want anything else to eat? The default answer is almost always no, without thinking about it. So let's try this. Do you want anything to eat? No. Would you like something to eat?
Well, it's almost
what else would you great. I love that. That's fantastic.
It's almost like, what else would you like to eat? So as a default, you put what in front of any question, and it's an open-ended question.
That's great. I like that a lot. The tone of voice thing is I love that as well. I think I've mentioned this before. I've certainly mentioned it to you, Gerardo. There's a chapter in one of Malcolm Gladwell's books where he references research that was done in human medicine on tone of voice. So this is the book that's from the book Blink, which is about your subconscious mind and how our subconscious makes decisions in the background without us thinking. The long and the short of it, it's actually a different study that they used the data for. It was recordings of human doctors in consultations, and they looked at doctors who had litigation against them, so they were sued for something, versus ones who never had any. And the first research was about what did they say, was anything in the way that the stuff that they said that made them more or less likely to be sued. And then a subsequent study, somebody took those recordings and they garbled the words, took the words out, and just kept tone of voice, and they sliced it into, I think it was 4-second clips or something like that. They could play those clips to study subjects, so students or random people, and say, can you guess who's going to be sued and who's not?
Wow.
And they were so accurate at saying, by tone of voice, at a 4-second clip of your tone of voice, subconsciously somebody's decided, you're an asshole, if you stuff up, I'm going to sue you.
Yeah, wow.
Versus, I like this person.
Yeah.
And I'll never sue you because I trust you. And
Yeah.
it starts with just that tone of voice. So when you pick up that phone, you better make very sure, because now you can't use your winning smile or your nice or a nice handshake to win them over. Your tone of voice is going to be epically important.
Yeah, you got me started on Malcolm Gladwell's book, so I'll have to read that one. That sounds like good quarantine reading.
One thing that I think actually does add value is, despite the fact you may be on the phone, nothing stopped you from going to the front door and waving through the front door.
Yeah.
You know, like, hey, Gerardo, like, I'm just waving through the front door. I just want to let you know that I'm going to take care of Fluffy now, and that, you know, like, this is who you're talking to, hey? It's like, oh, there's a person there, and then they got a picture to the voice. You know, there's a connection there. They kind of like, you know, like, it's you may not be able to shake their hand or put your hand on their shoulder, like, for 1 second, appropriate touch, right? And but like, there's something, they see that there is a person on the other side of that phone call, and you know, if you look like you're a doctor with a stethoscope on and a name badge, and you kind of fit the bill, it's like cred.
Yeah.
You know, I got a picture. You know, it's not just this voice. I have no idea what Alex sounds like. You know, I have no idea what Gerardo sounds like. But here we are now. That's that dude there, and he's going to take in my pet.
Yeah, great.
That's really good.
So we gave away all our secrets, Hubert.
You give it away all the time, man. All you have to do is Google. No, that's one thing you guys are great at, is sharing the stuff that you are good at. It's always amazing to watch it. Alex, are there any good things that are going to come out of this, that we're going to have left over when COVID blows over? What's going to stay behind? That's going to, let's talk about our profession. We can talk about philosophically about the whole human race, but let's talk about the veterinary profession.
I definitely think so. I think I think life will never quite go back to the way it was, and I think there's things like telemedicine for a start is going to be here to stay, where people are able to do consultations virtually. I think that's something that's coming, and there's some that don't agree that that's the right thing or the wrong thing, but it's, yeah, for sure. But it's coming, you know, so we either decide how we make it work in our profession, or we let the tidal wave come and we get, you know, swept behind. But I really believe that's coming. So how can we do that and incorporate that into our profession while still preserving the importance of the physical exam, which to me is, you know, the most important part of any consultation. And, you know, how can we make sure that we don't miss things because we're not able to have that conversation with a pet like a doctor would have with their patient? You know, we can't do that. So we can't ask them where it hurts, and those sort of things that we find out from our physical exams. So is it that telemedicine should be limited to those things that don't require a physical exam, like behavior, or things that we can see, like skin, for example? You know, these are the questions, but I think that would be one thing that I think will change. I think we need to meet clients where they are. So in terms of things that they can do from home, and whether that's to do with technology, the way they pay, the way they do their client info forms, the way they talk to us with updates or video calls, those sort of technology things, which as a profession we kind of are a little bit probably behind. I think we're going to probably catch up with those a lot quicker, and probably bring things into our practices where we would have previously kind of hummed and hawed about it for a while before we actually implemented them. So those would be the main things where I think it will impact. I don't know. What do you think?
Oh, you put me in the spot. Oh, thank you. You know what? I just think that as a profession, we need to level up. Okay, phone consults aren't easy, right? We take advantage of being in the consult room. We take advantage of being able to see and hear. Just imagine 6 months' time we look back in the consult room, with 12 months' time with the clients back in the consult room. You have next level, like, I don't know, ESP. What's ESP? What's the you know, like, next level skills in just understanding and hearing the subtleties, right? You either get it and you're successful in this time, or you're not. And if you're not, you'll soon pick it up, because you'll know you're not successful. And like, you come out at the end of I'm super excited about coming out the end of COVID and seeing what kind of things that the veterinary profession innovates, develops, puts together. Because, like, I don't know, like I keep on training for the future. I keep on investing into the future. I keep on trying to build a team for the future. And yeah, it's exciting. Sadly, it's exciting. I think it's, I don't know.
I think the other question, Hubert, is how do we reverse out of the situation we're in now? You know, we're in a client-free, for want of a better word, a client-free practices. How do we make that decision? At what point do we allow the clients to come back? You know, if they can go to a restaurant or a bar or the gym, can't be keeping them out of veterinary practices, can we?
Yeah.
How do we make that decision? Because once they're back in and once our staff are used to that, how do we make sure that our staff are still protected? How do we make sure the client's still protected? Those sort of things. And how do we do that gradually so that everybody feels comfortable with clients coming back into the building and that the timing is right? You know, that we don't do it too early or we don't do it too late. That's
it's a great question. Have you got the answers? Because that's what I'm sitting with. Because I'm looking at the numbers in Australia, going, well,
zero cases in Queensland for the last 2 days. That's where we're at.
Us as well. So I'm going, well, can we let them back in the building? I
got a perspective here only because I've kind of championed the way in rolling out team-based systems and siloing of hospitals and had to kind of share the vision with the team and get them all on board. And from a hospital director role of 2 hospitals, it's kind of like, I'm not going to make that decision until I am certain that we don't have to reverse that decision. And that's going to be guided by government. It's going to be guided by let's say the government reduces restrictions. I'm not going to make the call for at least maybe 2 weeks after, 3 weeks after, and see what kind of impact. If the government reverses the decision, then I know then that the government hasn't in that time frame, then I'm like, okay, now we should start to look at how we're going to roll it out. But I'm going to leave it to the team. It's like, hey, these are options. What do you guys want to do? You know, I don't want to champion the way backwards and then the people support what they create. If the team supported rolling back, having clients into the hospital, and then for some reason we needed to then reverse that decision, right? That's not my call. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, I will help them either way. But yeah.
This is great. I could chat forever, but we should probably start winding up, I'd imagine. Yes. Should we do the normal questions? Just because it's
do it, mate. You just do it. That's all.
For some reason, because it's Alex, I thought she could maybe get away without it. But you mentioned your isolation reading earlier. I always ask about podcasts because this is a podcast. What are you listening to at the moment?
So I love a number of podcasts, but there's Lewis Howes I love.
What's that?
It's School of Greatness. So it's a podcast called School of Greatness, and it's really all about what does it take to what makes great people great, really. And I think Lewis's journey himself is really quite inspirational, and how he went from being a footballer
to couch to LinkedIn guru to podcasting, like guru, more guru than you, Hubert.
That's not possible. Come on.
So from that point of view, so that would be my podcast of choice at the moment, because I am always looking and all different sorts of people, and it takes there's so many people around the world who do have greatness. What is their journey? How have they got there? And I find that really inspiring. So
awesome. Okay, and reading. What's next to your bed, or when do you read? Do you read in the mornings or in the evenings, or what are your reading habits?
Yeah, if I'm traveling, I'll read. I love reading on planes and stuff. Not that anyone's going anywhere right now, but it's always next to my bed is usually where the book is.
Yeah.
At the moment, I'm reading the Elon Musk's biography. I really love reading autobiographies, and again, seeing what makes great people great. What were the challenges they faced in their life, and how they've got to where they are. So autobiographies are a big probably, one of my favorite things to really indulge in.
Is that an autobiography, or did somebody write it?
No, it's a biography. It's written by
Someone else.
Someone else.
The other one I'm reading at the moment, which is like next level, if you haven't read it, is David Goggins' biography.
No.
Just what's it called?
Pain, more pain, and pooing pain.
Can't hurt me. It's called Can't Hurt Me, Hubert. You got to read it.
I'm going to be an ignoramus and say, who's David Goggins?
Yeah, David Goggins is one of the world. He's a ex-Navy SEAL, and he's just got an incredible backstory of how he grew up. But also, he just did some incredible feats of endurance. But he really talks about what are the limits. He has a 40% rule, which basically, when your mind is ready to give up because of physical pain, you are actually only at 40% of what you are capable of. And so if you can learn how to recognize that and move the threshold of pain and discomfort, physical pain and discomfort, then there's these incredible things that you can achieve. So he's run desert ultra marathons, and it's you can see the kind of book I love.
Awesome. Yeah, that sounds like a great read. I'm going to definitely have to look for that. Okay, cool. And then our last question. I didn't prep you on this. I'm sorry if I'm putting you on the spot with this, Alex, but you talk to young vets all the time anyway. So you're in a lecture theatre, and you've got the entire world's veterinary new grads in front of you, and you've got a minute or two to give them just one message. What's your one message that they have to hear from Dr. Alex Hynes? Yeah,
sure. I think it would be that they look at someone like me and think that they could never get to where I am now. I'll never be someone like Alex Hynes. And what I want to say to them is, I sat where you were. I went through the struggles that you will go through as a new graduate, both in my profession, in my personal life, and one of my favorite sayings is, it's very hard to beat a person who never gives up. If you don't give up and you have that belief system in yourself and you're not afraid to fail, and you do wake up every day, but believing that it's a new day and there's new opportunities to try again, then you can't help but succeed.
As expected.
See what I live with, dude? See what I live with?
Yeah.
I feel so humbled right now.
Alex, thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
It's been well worth the wait, and we will definitely get you back on again. And remember, listeners, if you loved this, and I'm sure you did, there's so much wisdom here. I could talk to these guys for hours and hours and hours, but luckily you can listen to them for hours and hours and hours, because they have their brand new educational platform that you've seen on social media, the Vet Success Academy.
I do. Thanks, man.
I think it's an incredible thing. There's going to be so much value in that, and I think everybody's very excited. I know I sure am. All right, we've got some exciting things coming up for everybody, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
See ya.
See you, mate.